Hello. Welcome to Engage Your Readers, making the most of your guided reading groups. I'm Eileen Clausen, and I'm super excited to be here with you today. I know you're probably here because guided reading is stressing you out. Whether you've just started groups or you've been in it for a few weeks now, you might just be worried about how things are going or how to set it all up. So I'm here to let you know that I'm going to help you and walk you through how you can make the most of your guided reading time with all your groups. So it's okay if you have no idea where to get started. I'm here to help. So let's begin. A little about me. I am Eileen Clausen. You can find me on TBT under my name, and my blog, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, everything else is Literacy with Eileen Clausen. I love sharing reading ideas, literacy ideas, and have for several years now. I specialize in elementary ed, certified reading specialist, and I absolutely love working with the early readers like kindergarten through second grade, but also have a love for the upper elementary kids as well. So I also have a membership site called Engaging All Readers, which I'll talk more about later. But if you ever have a question or want to reply to this workshop, you can feel free to email me or just stop by and say hi on any of the other sites. So before we get started, I wanted to give a little background. When I started teaching my very first year, I was a kindergarten teacher, and we were in a literacy workshop before the year started. It was like, one of my first things I attended as an official staff member. And I was sitting there listening, and we're talking all about letters, vowels, etc. And the instructor said, okay, let's talk about the letter A. What sound does the letter A make? And I started like shrinking down in my seat thinking, oh my goodness, please don't call me. I don't know if she was talking about long A, short A, what is she talking about? Of course I got called on, and I said the wrong sound. I said the long A sound. And my friend who was teaching fifth grade was like, oh, great. And she's our kindergarten teacher. And I was so embarrassed because I was like, oh my goodness, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm supposed to be teaching these kids how to read, and I don't know even the sound of the letter A. My point in telling you this is for two reasons. One, I want you to know that teaching reading is difficult. It takes a long time to feel confident and comfortable with what you're doing. So don't worry if you're still not there or if you're literally just beginning and you're feeling clueless. Everyone goes through it, but it will get better. What it comes down to, though, is also you don't want your students to feel how I felt in that situation. I felt unequipped to answer the question, even if it was simple. And if I think about it now, how did I not know that? But you don't want to put your students on the spot like that. But if you do ask a question, you really want every kid in your group to feel like they know the answer because they are so confident, not only in sitting in a group with you, but also in their abilities to read and answer questions about their reading. So twofold, just think about it when you are sitting with your groups, how you want your students to feel. Think about how you would feel in the same situation. And also know that you are not alone. Teaching reading is difficult, but it will get better. So our objectives for today include what each guided reading lesson should include. We're obviously talking all about guided reading. And what I will say is, although I didn't originally know much about teaching reading, I went and got my master's in reading. I started actually teaching kindergartners how to read. And I started to learn so much about how you can teach reading. And I used guided reading, and I realized the impact it can have on students when it's done well and when it's really having the students at the center of each group. So we're going to talk today about what each of your lessons should include, how you can engage your readers to make sure they're getting the most out of their time with you, and how you can make sure that your readers are making progress in every single small group that they're meeting with you. So we will go through that. And then I do have some free resources for you that I'm going to share with you at the end. I separate them by kindergarten through second grade and third through fifth grade. And I have both print and digital formats to see whatever suits you best. But you'll see a closer look at all of them a little later. So the reason that I wanted to talk about this is I have a ton of friends who are teachers. Teachers, we always flock together. And I'm sure you do too. I'm never going to forget the time that I was hanging out with, before I had kids, early in my teaching career. I was hanging out with my husband and two of our close friends. And we were sitting around ready to watch the Bears game. And my friend, who was also a teacher, she was a third grade teacher at the time, she came in with all her guided reading books. She had 6 different ones, Post-it notes, markers, everything. And she was ready to go. Now, this was supposed to be our time to hang out together. We hadn't seen each other in a while. And she was like so excited, but at the same time, she was like, it's Sunday. I got to do my lesson planning. I got to get my guided reading lessons ready and all that. The reason I say that is she had to write out all these different questions. She had to write out her focus words. She had to write out what she wanted each group to focus on strategy-wise, and it was a lot. It took her probably the whole Bears game, not only because she was, distracted talking to us, but also because there's so much that goes into one guided reading lesson. It takes a lot of time to plan for. However, you might be thinking too, like, I don't know where to start. I have all these guided reading groups. Now I have them benchmark. I know which levels they're supposed to be beginning at, but I still don't know what I'm supposed to do. But I'm going to tell you, all you need is a system. Once you have your guided reading system in place, then your planning for your lessons will go so much quicker. You will feel equipped to know what you're going to be talking about with each group without spending hours outside of your guided reading groups planning for them. So what is included in your system? This is what you need for your successful guided reading groups. You need to have an engaging text that's appropriate for the students who are in that group. You need to have a lesson plan that goes through specific word work that is going to be focused on in that text. You need a purpose so that students understand what strategies they can use and what they're looking for, whether it's comprehension-based or a specific phonics skill, for example. And you also need to have strategies. You need students to be able to understand what do they need to do in order to be successful reading when you're not sitting right next to them. So you are teaching them those strategies that they're going to apply in the guided reading group and then outside of the group as well. You need to have comprehension questions because comprehension is just as important as the reading itself. Students need to know how to respond to a text and understand it in addition to actually being able to read it. And then you want to have an informal assessment. That informal assessment includes running records. Your running records are a huge piece of guided reading groups because they guide you into what else you need to do with your students. And of course, the very most important part, which you can never forget, are your actual readers. Your readers are the cornerstone of your system. They are the cornerstone of your guided reading groups. That's why your guided reading groups go well, is because you have readers who are there ready to read. So as long as you have your kids ready to read and actually reading in your guided reading groups, you're on the right track. Okay, so we all know we thrive on routine. Routine is easy for us to follow as adults, it's easier for kids to follow, and it's easier for everything that goes together. So if you have a routine in your room and you're following it day after day with each group, the better it is for you and for your students. So here's how your routine should go. I always break up a guided reading lesson into 3 segments: before reading, during reading, and after reading. Typically, teachers have 15 to 20 minutes with each group. 15 minutes usually is the most common, considering when you have like kids switching, rotating between groups and centers and everything like that. So in your before reading time, you are going to be introducing the text. You're going to be talking to students like real simple, one sentence. This is what our story is about today. And here are some words that we're going to be focusing on. Let's take a look at these. Let's practice. You're going to model how to read a word in isolation. And then again, in context, you're going to have students understand what the purpose of their reading is for the day. And you're also going to have time to discuss strategies that you want them to use. The next thing is during reading. This is solely a focus on the student. Students are reading, students are reading, students are reading. They're using their strategies. They're applying what they talked about in the before reading and using it while they're reading their texts. You are listening to readers. You are guiding them if necessary. If they're not sure how to figure out a word, you can provide clues to things like, what did we talk about that you could do? And you are providing that encouragement to keep them going so that they feel confident and ready to continue to read. You don't want them to sit there getting frustrated and totally closed down. So during this time, if you have earlier readers, they might be reading out loud, whisper reading, nice and soft, so you can lean in and listen each time. With older readers, they do not have to be reading aloud, but what I typically recommend is that you then say, okay, I'm gonna have Jacob, you're gonna read that paragraph for me. Listen to one student at a time. Okay, go ahead, keep going. See how they're doing. Take notes, anecdotal notes, and see if you noticed anything about the reading behaviors. Then you're moving into the after reading portion. This is now where you're actually talking about the text. These are your comprehension questions that you came up with, and you're going to either have them write responses, you're going to verbally discuss it, you're going to talk about the strategies that they use so that you know that they understood what they did when they came to a word they didn't know, and it gives the other kids ideas of what they could do, and you're going to have them set goals for next time. So if it was something that they really got stuck on a word, you're giving them a suggestion, having these students give suggestions, and then they're going to set a goal for next time. So as long as you're following your system and you have a before during, and after reading, understanding, both you as the teacher and your students, your groups are going to do great. So each student should really have individual toolkits. So this can be something for younger students. Obviously, it's going to look different than for students at a higher grade level, but basically you want them to have tools that will make them successful in these groups. So this is a matter of getting things that are going to keep them engaged in the group, but also it's going to be things that actually help them develop their skills as readers. So for example, you might have letter cards for early readers because you might be spending time doing that during the word work, sight word cards, phoneme sound boxes, so you're breaking down sounds together, other things that are engaging, fun pointers, pencils, crayons, fun markers for after reading, for highlighters for identifying words in the text. You might have a notebook where they're responding to things. They might have a guided reading folder. You can use whiteboards, dry erase markers. You'll probably want to have some strategy cards and bookmarks, vowel sounds, bookmark, all those things that make them better readers. You want them all to have right there at the table so that they're accessible, so that while you're doing the groups, you're not shuffling around trying to grab things. Everything's right there, right behind you, right in front of them so that they can use it right away. So you're not only having these physical tools that they can use, but you're also having those tools that are then going into their mind so they can remember those strategies and those kind of things. So the tools are both physical and literally mental tools that they need as they're reading. And I'll provide a few more specifics on that later. Okay, so here's your system written out, breaking that before, during, and after reading down into a lesson. 15 to 20 minutes. You've got 2 to 3 minutes to actually reread the previous text. This is when you would be doing a running record, which we talked about the importance of those, because you're using that to inform your teaching. So you would have one student reading with you a text from the day before, maybe from 2 days before, and they're going through and you're marking it up to see how they're doing. Then you're going to move into the word work and intro to text portion. This is only 5 minutes, but it's just enough to get them warmed up for the reading before they're actually immersed in the book itself. Then, most important part, students are reading. Let them read, let them go through it, let them struggle, let them figure out words. It's not going to be so challenging that they're going to be frustrated. That means it's too difficult for them. It's going to be at just the right level where they can move through at a smooth pace, but still have some words that they need to work on. Last step, 3 to 5 minutes, they're working on comprehension. So you break this up in approximately this way. You're going to have each student figuring out every step of the way as they go through and covering all your bases. Okay, running records. Let's dive a little bit deeper into this. These running records are your informal assessments. You might have ones that already come with the text that you're using. You might have blank ones that you're filling out. You might literally just be using a notebook, marking off. I've done all of those things. It's just whatever you have available and whatever works for what you're currently doing. You're using this as your informal assessment to see how students are doing at the reading level that they're currently grouped in. You want to use this to decide if you should be moving them forward and do they need to move to a different group that's working at a different level, or are they just right in the right spot and really need to hone in on specific skills and strategies. It's a formative assessment that you can then go back and use in, when you're meeting with parents, when you're meeting with other staff members, when you're discussing students, and you're using it to inform your teaching. You can decide like, 3 of the 5 kids in this group need help with added endings, so we're going to really focus on added endings in our next week. It is data. These are great data points because if you have people who are saying, oh, my student's still reading at a level D and they've been reading at it for 6 weeks. Well, how do you know? Let's see. Let's look at their running records. Let's talk about it. Let's think about things that we can do to help them improve. And it's really about each reader. You want to know how the reader is doing in the group, how they're progressing. If they're not progressing, what can you do to change that and actually help them improve? You also want to always discuss what you did in the running records. So if you notice students making a lot of errors of something, you want to talk to them about that so that they are understanding like, oh yeah, I did do that. I should try better at that next time, or I'll make sure I improve it. So that when they're reading on their own, they're thinking about these things and thinking about how they can improve. Okay, next up is the intro to text and word work. So we're going to get a little more specific here. So this is your before reading. Remember, it's just a few minutes. You're going to talk about the title of the story. You're going to provide a simple sentence that just gives them an idea about the story. It's not a deep dive. It's literally just, here's what the story is about. You're going to discuss different words of they're going to see, and they're going to be finding examples of those words in the text. So for example, you might be discussing digraphs, added endings, and then you're going to say like, here's an example of a digraph from the story. You might have it on a whiteboard written down, and then they're going to go in their text and find it. It's on page 3. Let's all go in and find it. Point to it with your finger, cover it up with an eraser, those kind of things, so that they are seeing it and finding it, and then it's going into their brain. So then when it's their turn to actually read, they're going to see a word CH and right away know what that sound is. You're going to model what they're focusing on. So if it is something with a specific sight word or something like a digraph, you're going to show what it looks like to come across that one in the story, and then you're going to have them think about it when they're actually reading. You also want to set a purpose. So today we're reading to find out which of these kids ends up choosing the best pet. We're going to make sure that we're using our strategies. I want you to make sure that you're applying your understanding of the CH sound when you're reading words that have CH in them, those kind of things. So I'm going to record or play a quick video for you that shows you an example of word work.
Hi readers, I'm so excited to read our new story today. To begin, we are going to look at our sight words that we will see in the story. We will see the word we, look, this. First, I want us to practice the word we. So everyone has their whiteboard and marker. I want you to write the letters W-E to make the word we. Once you've written it, go ahead and hold it up so I can see. All right, what are the letters in this word? W-E. What's the word? We. Say it one more time. We. Now what you're going to do is use your finger to erase the word. W-E. What's the word? We. Great.
Okay, so again, remember you're focusing on your system, and as long as you're following your system, you're able to get through all the parts, including this word work portion, in a quick time right in front of your students to get them thinking about the text before they begin. Okay, so during reading, as we said, the focus here is that the students are literally reading. You want them to be using strategies. You want them to be focusing on the text, really honed in on their reading and trying their best. When they come to a word that they are completely lost on, some students just really get stuck and they don't know what to do. You're listening for that. You're listening for the kids who are all of a sudden sitting there not making a peep or just looking totally frustrated and confused. That's where you're going to start pointing to prompts that you might have right behind you, might have right in front of you. You're going to say, like, what did we talk about before we read today? What was something that we could do if we came to a word we didn't know? Oh, let's look at this word. This is the word change. Do you see a word like that you're trying to get through right now? You're encouraging them. You're just walking them through it. You are not telling them the word. Never, never. You're not telling them the word. You're just pulling it out of them bit by bit. The less tips you give and the more you put it on them, the better it is, because you're letting them take ownership of the words and the reading that they're doing. You are encouraging them. You're applauding their efforts, and you're moving on. Okay. Let me tell me if this sounds like you. Have you ever walked into a book room, if your school has one, and just been so overwhelmed? I don't care how organized it is. I don't care how nicely put together it is, but you just look at it and you think, I have a level G, a level F, I have a level P, I have a level Q, and a level A group. I have to find all these resources for the whole week. It's overwhelming. You might back out and say, like, I can't do this right now. I'm going to do it later. I get it. Everyone has been there, okay? As long as you have a book room. That's a great thing, but it can be overwhelming just because of the amount of things that might be there that you're not sure if it's going to fit your groups and if it's going to be appropriate for what you need. I've had so many teachers tell me they have a tough time finding texts that are engaging for their students, or even resources at all. Like they say, my admin told me we have to do guided reading, but then they didn't provide us any resources. Well, that's a true problem. How are you supposed to do a guided reading group without good quality resources? Well, I'm here to show you that there are ways to find it, and you just need to find those quality resources and engage your readers through the engaging text. So we'll talk more about these in a little bit. Okay, I want you to first tell me that I'm not alone on this. Have you ever had students get to a text they're reading through it, and you realize like, ooh, I did not read this far into the book. You have so many different groups that you're working with that, yeah, you didn't have time to go through every single little detail. So then students will start asking you questions and you're like, oh, let's look a little further into that. It's not a problem. I always think it's a great thing to tell your students to go ahead and explore the answer. Go through the text. Let's find the answer together. They don't know that you don't really know the answer. It just seems like, oh yeah, Mrs. Clausen really wants me to find it. That's what she always tells me. So you're not alone here. But in your after reading, the point is that you want to be discussing the text, right? You want the students having a conversation together where it feels like it's a back and forth and not just one student focusing on everything. But you want to be discussing what the text was about, specific questions. Usually you can relate to like the standards for your grade level. If students are working below level, you can do standards that are a different grade level, but you just want them really talking about the text and explaining what happened. You can get very specific, talking about characters, details. You can go to, okay, let's turn back to page 17. What was happening right here? Why did the character all of a sudden totally change its emotions? You want to be very specific so that you can really tell that students were understanding what the text was about. You also want to wrap up your discussion by talking about what strategies were used. Again, these are ideas that kids can then bounce off of each other and they can say, oh, when I came to this word, let them be so specific. When I came to this word, I wasn't sure what it is, but then I broke it down into its individual parts and I was able to figure it out. Okay, because that gives students ideas that like when they are on their own reading independently, they're like, oh yeah, that's what Jamie said she did in the group. I'm gonna try that this time. Okay, so not only should you be doing a verbal discussion, but you also wanna have written responses. This goes from kindergarten all the way up because you want students to really be able to think about it, write it. As we know, state testing, often they have to write it in the end anyway, but it's always good practice for them even at the early levels. So you might have them doing picture responses, you might have them do group responses where they're all completing a different part, or you might have post-it notes, bring out all the fun things to make it more engaging as they're responding to the text. Okay, so let's just talk about the lesson in general. Again, overall, you just need to be sticking to your system. Once you have your system down, like we talked about, you have all the moving pieces, you're going to feel so comfortable and so confident in your lesson. And the best part is your students are going to be excited about guided reading groups and having that small group time with you every day. Your overall layout should always be relatively the same. It does not matter if you have a level A group or a level P group. You are keeping those different parts of the lesson in the entire plan so that you can always move on and focus. Every few minutes, you're going from the before reading parts to the during reading to after reading. Doesn't matter the level of the group. I've had so many teachers who tell me how lost they are and how frustrated they are until they have something to follow. Systems work because you're able to do it on repeat over and over and over. And so you are not alone if you're feeling that overwhelm. It's just a matter of really shifting your focus slightly based on the ability of the group and putting what they need into each part. Okay, so let's talk about engagement. I am huge on engagement, huge. Part of it is simply having great texts. You have to have engaging texts in order for your students to be excited to be in those groups with you every day. They have to be interesting and they have to be something they actually want to read. Otherwise, you're going to lose them pretty quickly. Before you have the guided reading groups, you really should be getting to know your readers. So you want to find out what are their interests, how do they feel about reading, where do they like to read, just doing a simple reading interest inventory to get to know your readers. You can then use that information as you go through your groups. You want to have those reader toolkits we talked about. You have those fun little tools at the table ready to use so that you can use them during the word work portion. You can use them during the actual reading. You can do them when you're discussing the text afterwards. Having those things in place, they don't have to come out every day. It can be something where, okay, like on Thursday, every Thursday, we're going to take these out and use them. However it is that works for you. Then there's following your system. Again, most important part is that kids are reading, but when you have your system in place, you're able to get to all those things so that they are focusing on their reading right when those books are in front of them, and they're focusing on that guided reading group as soon as they sit down at the table with you. And again, great texts. Once you find them, hold on to them and keep using them. All right, and then another piece of engagement. So there's, of course, tons of fun tools out there. There's fun erasers, there's fun pointers, there's fun glasses, there's great highlighters. I've used all of these things. All of them are great. They don't always work. They don't. Sometimes kids get distracted. So my biggest thing is try them out. If they attract the reader and keep them focused on their reading, keep them. If they are distracting to the reader, they have to disappear, focus on the text itself, focus on the lesson, and then they can come back at another time. Attract, don't distract. So whatever you use, you want them to be engaged in the lesson, but you have to make sure that they aren't impacting them in a negative way. Okay, so for those of you that are loving digital, you'll see in the freebies, I do have a few freebies for you that are digital, the digital format of the printable ones. But basically, you really have a lot of things that are built right into Google. Like if you're someone who uses Google Slides or Google Classroom, Google Chrome has a lot of extensions that are already built in that can make your groups more engaging. You can use, they have little custom cursors that students can choose on their devices. You can use the annotation tools to find and add emojis and different thought processes that they have. They can identify things in the text from adding shapes, underlining, all those things. You can have them type into Google Slides as their responses to questions and the inventory, all those kind of things. And then you can also use Google Forms to really, you can use it to assess your students. You can use it to decide how students want to name the group. That's why I have the example there. You can use it to talk about different things they want to vote on and all those kind of things, talk about characters, whatever it is. You really can use the tools that are already built right into Google to make the most of your digital groups. You can use Bitmojis. There's so many different things that make it fun and engaging. Okay, so let's do one more thing, progress. So as I said, running records are your formative assessment that tell you how your students are doing, and you can use them to inform your teaching. You can get very specific in your observational notes about each reader and talk about how they did, different errors they were making, if they're ready to move on to the next level, which words were specifically difficult for them. All these things you can get very specific, and then again, use this to discuss with the student in a little mini conference. Tell them what you thought they did well, have them evaluate. What did they think they did well? Do a little self-evaluation. Let them tell you, oh, I noticed this, and oh, I was really struggling with this type of word. Talk about different strategies they use, talk about things they can do, and then make a goal. What's something we can focus on for next time? The more often you do these, the better, because then you're learning more about the reader and you know that they're in the exact right place in your groups. You know if they need to move on, if they're in just the right spot and just need a little help with specific things. These are very, very informative. Only should take a few minutes, and then you move on and you got enough information from just those few minutes. And teachers always tell me often tell me how much they love using running records as a way to check in on their students. So I hope that you use them, or if you don't yet, you plan to begin using them. And again, remember, this can be super simple. It can be just in your notebook, marking down how they're doing. Okay, so let's talk one more thing about progress. You want to make sure that your students are doing like a self-evaluation, like I said, and setting up a goal. Their guided reading goal, you could do this once a week, once every 2 weeks, whatever it is, but you want them to evaluate what they did, and you want them to decide what are some goals that they can set for next time. Are there different strategies they want to start using? Are there, different things they want to focus on in their fluency? All these different things. Maybe they need to improve their comprehension. Just you want them to make a goal and then go forward with that. So I do have those as part of the freebies, both the digital and printable format. But also you want to motivate your students. You want to keep encouraging them and telling them like how much you are like seeing them apply their strategies. You want to see, I love the way you were so focused in our group today. You were reading the whole time. You didn't even look up when the bell rang, and then you want to celebrate the success. Class, everyone, I want to tell you how proud I am of Amanda because she just did the very best comprehension response. She was so focused and she knew details from the story, and from what page she found it, she found her evidence from the text. Again, something that you want all your students to be doing. You want to celebrate that success. And then you want to set goals, okay? A goal can be something fun like, let's celebrate. You get to read with me one-on-one. You get to pick a friend to read with. Do a group cheer. Take a selfie of you reading. Whatever it is, you choose. Okay, so here are all your freebies for you. I'm going to share the file. And then I'm also going to email it to you later. But one thing I just want you to make sure that you know is that Engaging All Readers is my membership site that has helped a wide variety of teachers. They've used it with their students. It's made their lives so much easier. I'm so honored to be able to help so many teachers and students with their guided reading groups. But basically, it's a bunch of different lessons, fiction and nonfiction, for levels pre-A through Z, There's 15 fiction, 10 nonfiction for every single level. And with that, you will find a lesson plan, a leveled engaging passage. There is a print format and a digital format if you want that. It's engagingallreaders.com. You can check it out. Here's a quick video to show you what it's all about. Okay, so you can access all of these as a one-time purchase from levels pre-A to Z. It's the full curriculum, lesson plan, running record, comprehension questions, answer key, vocabulary cards for nonfiction, everything we were talking about to make the most of your guided reading groups without being overwhelmed. And you can purchase it today just by going to engagingallreaders.com, and I will put it there so you can see it. But again, it's a one-time payment. You get lifetime access, and you can either get just the print, you can get just the digital, or you can get the print and digital together for an extra savings. Or if you're not someone who needs everything pre-A to Z, you can also find these in my Teachers Pay Teacher store, Eileen Clausen. So that is it for today. Thank you so much for joining me. You will get a certificate of completion, which is in the free download, which is also being sent to you after we are done. Thanks so much.